Alright guys, my name's Charlie Bass. Any of y'all that don't know me, I am the president of the Arkansas Trappers Association. And welcome to our spring convention, man. We really appreciate everybody showing up. We're going to talk a little bit about mink. How many of y'all trap mink? Trapped some mink? Probably trapped some up in Pennsylvania, didn't you?
Yeah, quite a few.
A little different territory.
It's totally different. Talking bottom edge sets on rocky creeks, or down here
it's wide open, more or less.
Yeah.
And those bottom edge sets do work here in places.
Yeah.
Especially those wings of those culverts and stuff like that. If you get up north in some of those other states up there too, they dig a lot of pocket sets. They want to dig a lot of pocket sets with just a hole up in the bank. They'll put the trap in front of it, put some bait up in it. Here, you don't want to do that. You start digging pocket sets and you start putting bait up in there, what happens in Arkansas?
Okay.
Right. Why? Warms up.
First thing to come out too.
Yep. What smells when it warms up?
Oh, yeah.
Stinky fish. It'll stink, and you'll catch possum. Believe it or not, you'll catch them possums and skunks in water that deep. They will step in it to get to that fish. So you want to avoid those, and you're just wanting to specifically target the mink. Still going to catch some coons in those mink sets. In Arkansas, we use a lot of blind sets. Okay, blind sets are the key to mink in the state of Arkansas. And to me, anywhere in the South, if you're trapping mink, blind sets are just the way to go. You're going to catch more mink in those blind sets. And some of the tools we use for those is the old basic 1.5 coil spring. Been around for a long time for mink. It is a mink killer. That's a mink trap right there. It's heavy enough. It dispatches them very quickly. So it's just a really good trap for mink. The other one is your 110 conibear. You can catch a lot of mink in these 110 conibears using them in the right situations. They're just a really good trap, and they're probably the two main traps. You can use some number 11s. That's a Sleepy Creek number 11. That's a 1 3/4 Duke. I do run some of those. I have different stuff here that I use. A shovel. I've got my T-stakes, conibear holder. This is a drowning cable right here. They call them dispatch cable. You can call it whatever you want. It's to get that animal out in the water. This is a longer one. Years ago, I learned you needed a few of these on your line, and one simple reason: you get in some of those bigger ditches, you'll get a lot more otter. So you want these on the line. You're gonna, if you catch otter, they'll run the same place as a mink. As Mike said earlier, they're just a big mink. Is all they are. Just they stay in the water more, but they're a big mink. So sometimes that can come in a little handy. Most of the time when you're trapping mink in like a state of Arkansas, you're gonna be trapping ditches, road right-of-ways, these little ditches. Some of these little ditches won't be that wide. Some of them will be 4, 5, 6 foot wide. Some of them even bigger than that. You get on some of the bar ditches. And they're gonna have water depths from everything from a couple of inches to 10 or 12 foot deep, depending on the bar ditch and depending on how deep and wide it is. When you're dispatching these animals and trapping them, mink are creatures of habit. They will run the edge. That's what they do. They run the edge. They stay on that edge. Now they'll get up, they'll hunt in fields, they'll hunt up in that thick stuff up there. You may have a setup there, you might catch a mink in it accidentally. But that's because he's hunting in that area. He's hunting up them little birds and stuff and mice. But when mink are running these banks like this, they're gonna be running these edges right here. They got these edges, and that's what they're gonna be hunting, because that's just their nature. They're a land animal that visits the water. So they like to hunt these edges. They'll also use these little grassy trails through this tall grass and stuff like this. If you kind of look at this from a mink's perspective, it just almost looks like something's been going right through there and coming right here. Now, that could be a mink, it could be a coon. Most likely here, where we're at right here, it could be either one. I wouldn't be surprised if there's not even some few muskrats in this, looking at that over yonder.
The old beaver hut's on that point just across the pond is the old hut.
The old hut? And there's probably a few rats on there then.
The old beaver hut. Yeah, they go into them quite a bit.
Yeah, those rats will move in places like that. But the mink, he's a creature of habit. If you'll watch him, if you ever get the chance to see one live, and man, they're in every little nook and cranny. If it's a little nook, they're checking it out. Up on the White River, we get the luxury of seeing them sometimes in the daytime up there when we're fishing. And man, you get to watching one of them. He's checking out every little, he's coming down through here. He's checking out this spot. Here's a little root, he'll check it in. He'll cut through, he's just checking out everything. So he's running kind of randomly. Well, what we want to do is make him run where we want him to go. So like on those ditches and stuff, what I'll do, and we're going to kind of pretend some of this, because this bank's not really a good bank for this, but we're going to kind of pretend for it. We're going to say this is a taller bank, like a ditch bank. But what we're going to do is you can do two things. You can come in there and you can take your foot and you can just do that right there. Just get that deep enough that that trap sets in the water. Okay? Or you can take a shovel and you can just shave it down and pull it out and make just a nice smooth spot for that mink to run. Now, something I got to do, and I wished I'd have had these 30 years ago. These are 4-foot fiberglass fence posts, electric fence posts. And I just made the little ends. Of course, you can buy the hags, you know, one of those other companies that they make stuff. I made these myself. These are slick, and yes, they will hold a coon. I've got video of me taking coons out of them. They'll hold them. But it's just a little 4-foot rod. And most of those ditches drop off pretty fast. So you may be standing here, you take a step, and you're this deep in the water in those little bar ditches and stuff. And these work really simple. Push it in and push it down, put your T-stake there. Not gonna push that all the way down, but you kind of get the idea. Now, that mink comes down here. That's that 4-foot rod, and I'm pulling. So that tells you how stout that is. Any of you guys ever long line mink? Wouldn't you like to have these back 20, 30 years ago? Oh man, when mink were $20 a piece. It's been awesome. But we learn things as we get older. Now, one of the things on these traps, I always file them really sharp. This one here's already been done, and I pull it down. I want it just barely touching, because when that mink hits that pan, I want him caught. As quick as he touches it, I want it to snap. By doing that, you're going to catch him. When you set that trap for mink, two things to remember. I'm going to leave that up for right now for a second. You always want the loose jaw right up against the bank. How many people know why that is?
Don't want rattle when you step on it?
Nope.
So they don't step on the dog instead.
Huh?
So they don't step on the dog instead?
Correct. Why do we not want them to step on the dog?
They don't want fire.
Well, not only that.
It'll throw them in the air.
Pull this up. Not only that, how much distance is there to the pan? How much distance is here to the pan? Right there is almost 3 fingers to that pan. Right here, 2 fingers. That little bit of difference right there can make everything for a mink. He's not very big. It's not very wide, especially when you get to the little sows, little females. They're gonna be half the size of those bigger males. So if you put this trap right here against that, you just gave him an extra ½ inch to get by that trap. Where when you put it like this, you took a ½ inch away from him. One of the guys years ago did an outdoor book on mink trapping. He messed up and put over the trap in there the pictures, the drawings like this. He had to go back and hand revise every single one of them and state, don't do that, put it this way. So that tells you how important it is. He realized his mistake, went back and fixed his books and fixed all of them. So you want that trap, that loose jaw up against the bank. And what that's going to do when the mink comes along, he's going to step And if his foot just catches that pan, he's caught. I mean, that's all you want him to do. Once it catches, he's caught mink. So that makes that very simple. And that's a very effective set on those ditch banks, because if you were standing in a ditch and you're looking down at the banks this high, which typically road ditches are like that, most of them, and you're looking down that bank, there's usually a little shelf that mink will run on, and all you're doing by shaving it off is forcing him to run where you want him to go. That's all you're doing, because he's going to hug the bank just like a cat will hug a rock ledge or a brush pile. Cats will get right up close to those brush piles. That mink's going to do the same thing on that edge of that ditch. Y'all want to pass that around and look at it, how it's made? Trust me, it'll hold a coon easy. That's just a number 8 self-tapping screw through those is all it is. The other trap that I like to use for mink is this one right here. And I like to keep mink very simple. I got the luxury of going with Jim Spencer on his trap line years ago, and he used that KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. And you do that right there, it's very simple. If I had to pick 2 traps, I'd pick that one and this one. That's all I would take on a mink line. One thing I do these traps right here, and this one, as you can see, that wire broke on it right there. I always loop these triggers that come off of it right there. And that wire tends to want to pop off. So what I've started doing is going back on my 110s and taking a little piece of 16th cable and just putting it on there with a double ferrule. Just put it in my deal, put it on. Now I've got a loop. Why the loop? Why the loop trigger?
Something for them to aim for.
The sows. Again, on the sows, back when mink were high, if you had just a V trigger there, nothing here, that sow, she's not quite that big. She'll go right through there and she would never get caught. With this, she's gonna hit it and she's gonna get caught. So with that loop trigger, you're giving that mink something to pull against and he's gonna get caught. And it kind of is aimed for because it's a round hole, and mink, when they see a hole there, they're gonna go through it. This one's set up a little different. It's got the bolt on it. Reason for that, some places it's just really simple to poke that in the ground or poke it into a bank, then run a little stick through it and you're going. It's set and you can go on. But I will tell you one thing about these, the double spring ones, I hate. I'm gonna tell you why. They don't have safeties. Guess what happens when you get one on your hand? Better hope you got a trapping buddy by or you're going home with it. So the single springs is what I like to use on mink. You don't need nothing really any stouter than that. This is just a little H stand right here. You slide a little trap in there. Bam, it's there. It's set. And when you're setting these in grassy trails, let's say a mink is running right through here. And I would, if I was out in the wild somewhere and I seen this, I'd definitely set it. Pull that up there. Sometimes one little thing can turn him. Now, if you kind of get down, lean over and kind of look at that, what does that look like? Just something there. He's just, to him it's sticks, it's grass, he's just gonna go through it. The other place that these 110s really shine, and there's 2 places they really shine on trap line. One is culverts. When you got those big culverts, you put your footholds down at the bottom. Pay really close attention to that culvert. You'll see a little, it won't be that wide. Almost look like a little rat made it. Going up that bank, over the road, and down the other side. Put a 110 in there. You'll see real quick what made it. You'll catch some of the biggest boar mink right there in that 110. Because they will slip that little trail and go right back up over top of that culvert. A lot of people think they'll swim through the culverts, and they will. But a lot of times they go up and over. Especially in February. Why would you think in February?
Rutting.
They're rutting. They're rutting. They're hunting the females. It's mating season, and they are flat on the move. So they're constantly going and going and going. So February, you're going to catch probably more mink in February than you are any other time of the season, just because of that rut. The other place those shine at is concrete bridge abuttons. And that gets into that underwater, that bottom edge set you were talking about. I've got some of those H stands that are that tall. There's little stands like that. The handle is, the stand's not. The stand's the same as that. It's just the handle's extended up this high. And the reason I do that, I put those by the bridge abutments. So if the water comes up, that trap's still working. That trap may be this deep under the water on that bridge abutment. But I guarantee you there'll be a lot of times you'll lean over, because you can't get down there to it, so you just lean over, you grab that handle, pull it up, and there'll be a big buck mink in it, or a muskrat. They swim right along the edge of that bridge abutment. And I mean, they swim right tight to it, so you want that trap right up against it. Flat side of the shovel. If that's your bridge abutment, when you put that trap in, you want it in just like that. Just that tight to it. You want it touching that wall. Because he's going to come right down the side of that wall. And if you'll look at those walls, a lot of times you'll see them there. And if you like rabbit, you'll catch rabbits in them also. You'll catch a lot of rabbits in these right here on those bridge abutment walls. So, you like eating rabbit? Yeah. You like eating rabbit? Well, you'll catch them right there on those bridge abutment walls with those 110s. Any questions on mink?
So I have 160 conifers. Does that work for mink too?
It can. A lot of times, if you're going to use a 160, you want the trap with the dog on the bottom, and you want it beat out. You don't want it just a real wide bead. More for coons, you want to narrow it down a little bit. And if you're going to use the 160s, I would recommend the high banks. What happens is, and those 110s work good for that too. That water comes up, you got a ditch bank running down through here. Well, now it's got water on both sides of it. Where's your rabbits and stuff gonna run?
Up on top.
Right down the top. There's gonna be a trail. Set that trail up, you're gonna catch mink in that 160.
Okay.
And usually in the 160s, you'll catch nothing but the big boars. You'll catch the big boys in it.
And raccoons.
Possums.
Yeah, possums and skunks.
Oh yeah, you're gonna catch skunks on those bar ditches. The good thing about the 160s and skunks, you have a 99.9% chance they don't spray in a 160. It breaks their back. And skunks being worth more than a coon. Yeah, they're running anywhere from, depending on if they're just the straight white stripe ones, they get up there $20, $25 range for a skunk.
Tan or green?
Green. They was, I don't know how many was at that Malvern selling that one bundle went across. They brought like $25 a piece. So, skunks are good. Skunks are good money right now. They're going to the craft trade. Is where they're going to. Like I said, I do use extension cables sometimes. And where I use extension cables at is if I'm in a lot of rocky places, I'll just hook it to a tree root, set the trap. The mink, if he's any depth of water like this right here, he'll drown right there in the water. I like to use fox grapples for those too, fox drags and a long chain. You just wrap it up in a tree root, set your trap, go, come back. If you got a coon, he'll be right there. If you got a mink, he'll be out in the water, and he'll, with all that chain and stuff, he'll be drowned. So it'll dispatch him really quick. Anything else y'all got on this? The big key to catching a lot of mink is covering a lot of miles, putting a lot of traps out. Okay, if you're going to catch big numbers of mink, you're going to have to put out a lot of traps. You're talking a 150 to 300 mile loop to catch a lot of mink. You're wanting to hit those numbers, 20, 25 mink every time you run. That's what you're going to have to put out. You're going to have to put out a lot of traps. You know, Tony was talking earlier about putting out 60 that first day. That first day you put out 60, put 25 out that next run. The next run after that, you're going to put more out, and you're going to put more out on a mink line. You're going to be constantly adding to that mink line, and you're going to be constantly taking traps up that are not producing. But now, here's the thing. If you're going to buy a trap, leave it. I learned this with Jim Spencer. I went on his line one of the days he was pulling traps. I got the pleasure of going with him, and I'm going to tell you, that was a mink guy. He knew mink. he had one trap. Had been sitting there the entire season. And next to the last day, that trap had a mink in it. It had not caught nothing the whole season. But the reason he left it there was because it was off the road just a little bit, and running the way he was running, he didn't want to stop and take the time to go pull it, but he could see it from the road. So by leaving that trap there, because he was going by it every day, it caught a mink, and that's back when mink were bringing $20, $22 a piece. So that trap paid off in the end. So just because it's there and it's not catching doesn't mean it won't ever catch.
I've done the same thing with culverts on otter.
Yeah.
Place a 330 there, and it might sit there all winter, and then go to take it up, and there'll be one sitting.
We one sitting in it, and it's because you're driving by it every day, and you're running really hard. You don't have the time to take it up. You just leave it, but you know it's there. You're going to check it, and like I said, you're going by it every day, so you know that trap's there every day.
Don't you think mink? They don't come through that spot every day.
What,
it
mink?
might be a week before.
It might be a week before he comes back. It might be 2 weeks before he comes back. Mink's territories, the males are around 20 square miles. Females are around 10 square miles for me.
And that's a lot of ground to cover when you're that little.
It is. You got legs that short. But it's no different than a cat. You know, I equate mink trapping to cat trapping, because a male bobcat's radius is 50 square miles. And a female's is about 25 to 30. So it's not much different when you're looking at a mink and a cat. You're doing the same thing if you're long lining for cats. If you're long lining for cats, you're not going to put out 5 traps and go, oh, I'm going to catch 30 cats. I know a boy over at Newport, he ain't got no legs, and he catches 30, 35 cats a season. He ain't even got no legs, guys. Seriously. He's had both legs every day. You know, you need to see guys like that. You got to look up to them a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I had a good friend of mine, John L. Tucker, and I'll say his name 100 times. He passed away here a while back, but that old man could not walk in the woods. He scooted on his butt, and he caught cats and fox. I had a lot of respect for that man. So, you know, getting out there in the woods and doing this stuff, it's a lifestyle. It is, and it's an enjoyable lifestyle. And you have to look at it from the conservation side. You know, you're taking the surplus, leaving stuff out there, and
It's a renewable resource.
it is very, very, very green.
Putting the balance back too, to where you don't have
You
too
put the
many.
balance back in nature that we've messed up.
Yep.
And it's green. It's very green, and we mess it. I hate to say it, but we mess it up more and more every year with all this housing development. And you go by a place you trapped years ago, and what happens when you go by it 10 years later and you hadn't been there? What's there then?
Concrete and houses.
Concrete house. Absolutely. So it's, the world's growing, but fur right now is definitely 100% a renewable resource. So anything else y'all want to know about mink you can think of?
Maybe get you to put one up next time.
You seen my foot up mink.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, everybody else was bringing 6, but I brought 9.
Yes, sir.
That's from learning to put them up, and I learned from Jim Spencer. I learned from the best how to put them up. When and that's another thing too, guys. I don't care how many of these deals you go to. I don't care if you listen to somebody like me who's been doing this for over 40 years. I don't care if you listen to somebody like her who's only been doing it for, what, a year?
6 months.
You will learn something from everybody you watch do a demo. I don't care who they are, how long they've been doing it. You will learn something from them. And that's one of the big factors in trapping that makes it such a great, great thing to do. You're constantly learning, always constantly learning. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say this on camera. Talk to some of them guys up there. Some of us older guys, we're the EJ Dailies and the OL Butchers and all those guys that came before us. We're those guys today, okay? These guys are the ones that's gonna be looking back and saying Mike Fisher's name or Charlie Bass's name or Chris Hathcote's name or somebody like that. They're going to be doing that because trapping is constantly evolving too. I know I used that word. Really more it's adapting. But It is. It's constantly adapting. It's constantly changing. The tools, the technology, everything is constantly changing. It's changing at a very fast pace. Where years ago, there was a long period of time, they basically had certain traps and that was it. But now we've got all these different tools. It's a constantly changing process. Now, it's still the same concept. You're still trying to get an animal to put his foot, and I'll say this 1,000 times, you're trying to get an animal to put his foot in a 2-inch circle. You're using put old traps, you're trying to get an animal to put his foot in a 2-inch circle. Okay, that's what you're trying to do. Whether it's a coyote, whether it's a mink, whether it's a muskrat, whether it's a badger, whatever it is that you're trapping, you're trying to get that animal to put his foot in a 2-inch circle. I see these guys go, man, I got to have the biggest trap out there to catch something with. No, sir, you do not. You do not have to have the biggest trap out there to catch something. Okay? You seen Tony's video on the 450s? Why do you need a 650 to catch a coyote? You don't. That's where you're trying to get him to put his foot back there. Bigger's not always better.
And most trap pans are only 2 inches in.
2 inches, yeah. To me, I think it's kind of like lure and bait. It's the gimmick. I'm trying to sell you something. So if I can convince you need a bigger trap, what are you going to buy? A bigger trap. You know, I'm not going to use a 650 for mink. I don't need a 650 for mink. I can catch a mink in a haul. You know, that's a pan smaller than this. So I don't need a 650 for mink. I don't need a 650 for coyotes. I can catch a coyote. That trap right there is caught tons of coyotes. That trap he's got right there, that 1.5. How many coyotes you think those have caught over the years? Exactly. So you don't need the big trap. The big trap's not necessary. So, anything else? Remember 2 things on mink. One, they're a land animal that frequents water. Okay? You can catch them in dirt holes. You'll catch them in a dirt hole making a coon set or a coyote set right there close to the water. You can catch them out in the field in a dirt hole. They will travel those places. The other one is they're creatures of tight spaces. They love to hug those banks. And when I say hug them, they hug them. You get a chance to watch them, man, watch one. Good place to go is a spring river. Go up to Spring River early morning, misty morning, you'll see mink working the bank.
And they can't pass up a hole.
No, they can't pass up a hole. That's why them guys use them up north. They're so effective up there because they can use that bait. Where here, they're not that effective because of the warm weather factor with the bait. That doesn't mean you can't dig a hole. You can dig a hole, but you're going to attract everything else in Arkansas to that hole. You're going to attract every raccoon and every possum to that hole. Even if there's no bait in it, they're going to be attracted to it. The only other upside to the hole is you will catch otters. If otters see a fresh hole, for some reason, don't ask me why, an otter's going to come and check it out, and you will always have him by the front foot because that trap's so tight up against that bank. I have caught otters and had them in water that deep and come back and they're just laying there because they couldn't get up, high enough, out of the water. But it amazes me that you'll catch that otter and hold him right there. So, you'll catch him. But for some reason, otters, when they see that fresh hole, it's an attractant. It's attracted to muskrats, any of those critters like that, you're gonna catch them in. Anything else?